Hey everyone, welcome back to Patriot Ridge Farm. So this is the next video in a series of emergency preparedness. So if you're not into that kind of stuff and you think it's all just BS, bye. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to continue on with the food preparations, and I want to just kind of cover a couple little things. I know not everybody has the ability to do or the knowledge to do what we do in our home, but YouTube is a wonderful information source for this kind of stuff. You can learn all kinds of stuff off of YouTube. You can find pretty much anything that you want. You can find all the information that you need on, on the internet about this kind of stuff. And the only way to do it is just dive into it. Make sure you pay attention. You're doing it right. You're doing it safely. What I'm going to talk about today is the last time I talked about more of your shelf-stable stuff, but also having some regular canned foods that you buy in the store on hand to kind of help diversify your food stores. Not everybody wants to live on rice and beans alone. Not everybody wants to live on just pasta alone. You have to have a diversity in your food preps, and you also have to consider foods that you're not going to require you to use the water that you have for drinking and sanitation for food prep. The reality of water is what FEMA tells you, what, a gallon a day per person. But you also have to consider, is somebody's going to get sick if it's a long-term situation, or somebody's already sick when it happens. So you're going to have increased water usage for sanitation. You have to consider about your waste disposal, poop, pee, that kind of stuff. Unless you live in an area where you can just kind of pop outside and drop trowel beside a tree somewhere, cover it up with a little dirt when you're done, those kind of things. What I focus more on is home preparedness and having this stuff in your home. Of course, there's going to be many situations that's going to require you to leave, evacuate, and leave your home behind. And, thankfully, where we live in West Virginia, typically what we deal with is more weather type stuff, typically blizzard type conditions, snow, long-term power outages, and flooding, those kind of things. We do get tornadoes here. We don't get them too often, but I think within the last 2 years, like 2024, 23, we had like a rash of tornadoes in the state of West Virginia, and thankfully it wasn't widespread damage like you'd see out in the Midwest and stuff. West Virginia's mountains and hills and hollows and stuff like that. A lot of people live near water because that's where their ancestors rooted and set up, because water was a form of transportation. It was water, it had fish in it, had everything, and everybody kind of congregated around rivers and streams. We didn't, thankfully. I've lived through floods. I don't want to live through floods anymore. That's why we're up on a mountain over here. So some of the things I want to talk about today is pressure canning, home canning your own proteins and fats. Now this is chicken that we raised here on this farm, that we processed, we butchered here, we cut into chunks and pieces and everything else, processed the chicken down into its primal cuts, and we pressure canned it. A little bit of, you didn't even put water in it, just put a little bit of chicken bouillon in it. And this was pressure canned in November of 2021. And it's still sealed. You want to make sure that you don't leave the rings on this type of stuff, because if you leave the rings on it, if for some reason this would break its seal, somewhere along the lines it can reseal itself after it's contaminated, and you're going to get a lot of nasty stuff growing in it. So when you pressure can, as long as that button's not pushing in and out and it's still sealed, you're good to go. And it's not discolored, okay? So this is chicken that, like I said, we raised, we butchered and processed here on the farm, and we home canned it here. Now, do you have to start raising chickens and butcher your chickens? No, you don't. You can go to the store. You can buy chicken. You can buy chicken legs. You can buy chicken thighs. You can buy breasts. You can buy wings. You can bring it home and do it like this, okay? Or you could buy a regular, just plain canned chicken that's already done for you. Personally, I don't like it too well because it just tends to be breast meat and it's kind of dry. I like the fat. I like the dark meat as well. And yes, this is fully cooked. If I need to eat this, I can pop that lid off. I can pour this in a pan and warm it up, or I can just set this jar in a little bit of water in a pan, pop the lid, and warm it up in this. There's good fat and protein right there. There's enough right there. We're a family of 4. There's probably 2 meals in that. Okay. Next thing is not everybody has the option or the opportunity to do this. As we hunt, this is home canned venison that we hunted here and harvested here on a farm. This is home canned venison, and this is from 22. So it's time for me to start going through this. It's still good. It's still sealed. You notice no ring on it, okay? And that nice little fat cap on there, that's actually a secondary seal. Once you cook this down and it cools, that fat will seal the top of that. There's not a lot of fat in deer meat, but that's a fat cap. And the same thing with chicken. I can warm this up and eat it, or I can just eat it right out there as it is. Probably not too palatable being like cool with the waxy fat on top, but in a have-to situation, I could eat this. Next thing is, there's a meal already in a can. All I gotta do is open it up and eat it. Yes, it's not the most nutritious thing on the planet, but it doesn't require any water. The chicken doesn't require water. The venison doesn't require water, and this doesn't require water. It's already done. There's calories, there's protein, there's fat, there's carbohydrates in that, okay? So this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. I wouldn't just live wholly on beefaroni or rigatoni or spaghetti and meatballs, but this is a source of nutrition when you need it. And it's shelf stable. Yes, you want to mix in vegetables and stuff if you can. But I would be very lean on getting a bunch of corn. Corn doesn't have a lot of nutritional value to us. Not in this form, okay? True corn requires a whole process to get the full nutrition out of it. This is going to add texture and a little bit of flavor, but you're going to see this again later, if you know what I mean. So you can have some of this, but I wouldn't take up a lot of space with this. And of course, this doesn't require water because it's already got water in it. The next thing is dehydrated apples. Now we took and got a bunch of apples in season and brought them home, sliced them up, dehydrated them, pressure sealed them, vacuum sealed them. So we put them in there in a jar, put the lid on it, got one of those little vacuum sealers that goes on top, sucks all the air out. There's a nice little snack, a little bit of sweet for you, and that's going to last for a long time. And we rotate through this a lot because the kids love this stuff. And you don't have to put anything in it. If you want to put a little sugar on them and dehydrate, or a little bit of sugar, which I wouldn't because the sugar concentrates when you dehydrate anyways. The natural sugar is the fructose in it. But a little bit of cinnamon or something like that on them and then throw them in a dehydrator. Now you got cinnamon apples. So that's something that we do. Instant oats, same thing. Put them in these big half-gallon jars. Or is that a gallon jar? I don't know. Anyways, put them in these big jars. And we vacuum seal them just the same way we did the apples. And then steel cut oats, same way, okay? So we have those. Now, that's not something I'm going to typically eat on a day-to-day basis, but in a situation where I have to, yes, I'll eat those. The problem you run into is this requires water. This requires water. So everything else that I just showed you doesn't. Now, we also took potato flakes, and there's 4 servings of potato flakes in this. So what we did was we got those little brown lunch bags, put the servings in there. There's 4 servings in there, and then we rolled it up in that little bag and then put it in a vacuum sealer and sealed it up. We also added a full tablespoon of salt. So each bag has its own little tablespoon of salt. So you have salt for your potatoes, and there's enough there for 4 servings. This is going to require water, but it's also starches, carbohydrates, and stuff for you, and it's filling. And you have the salt. So if you have a big container of salt, like a big bucket of salt type of thing, you're not opening that bucket up to get a serving of salt and potentially exposing the whole bucket to any kind of contamination depending on the situation that you're in. So 4 servings of potato flakes, vacuum sealed, salt. And if I remember correctly, there's 600 calories in this, in those 4 servings. So there's 600 calories in those. Next thing we did is we took flour, we put it in a brown lunch bag, rolled it shut, vacuum sealed it. We also have yeast, which if we ever have to use it in the next 10 years, the yeast probably isn't going to be any good. But we also have sugar or salt in there as well. Now, the thing about yeast, you do not have to have yeast to make bread. You can make flatbread. Same thing. Now, this takes I think each loaf will take 2 1/4 cups of water. And there's 2 loaves of bread in this. This is measured out for 2 loaves of bread. So don't think that you have to have yeast, but we had a bunch of it, so we went ahead and just put it in there and sealed it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. I don't know. If we have to and we have to have bread, we can make flatbread. Very simple to do. But we sealed these up and put these in a food safe bucket. Food safe bucket, put a lid on it, seal it, it's good to go. Now we do rotate through that. The wife does rotate through that and use that, and we refill it as we need to. Now again, let's remember that this is all based on staying at home, okay? And this takes up, so I've got a 6-foot by 8-foot room downstairs that all of this stays in. It's kind of tight, but this is where everything stays. It's in our basement, so it's climate controlled. Even if we didn't heat or cool that basement, it's going to stay right around the 50-degree mark, okay? Even, you know, if it's 20 degrees outside, the walls are insulated to the degree that, and are thick enough to the degree where it's going to stay in the grade that the basement is buried at, it's going to stay about 50 degrees. So nothing that's going to allow it to freeze, nothing that's going to allow it to get too hot. Now the next thing I want to talk about is okay, so I've got my food stores. How long are they going to last? How long are we going to be in this situation? Well, that's going to vary on the situation. If you look back at COVID, we were locked down, told to shelter in place, hunker down, whatever. And some places, people were stuck in their homes for a very long time. And getting food and stuff like that presented a challenge to a lot of people, aside from the fact that a lot of people couldn't even boil water. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, I'm just saying a lot of people learned that they didn't have the skills to even cook at home. For the long term, seeds. Make sure you have seeds. There's radishes in here. There's carrots in here. There's some green leafy vegetables. Oh my goodness, what else? There's onions. There's lettuce. Just a whole bunch of stuff. There's even sprouts. There's even stuff for microgreens in here. There's some herbs. There's even some flowers. There's broccoli. There's just all kinds of stuff in here. These are just, my wife won these at as a door prize at the homesteading conference that we went to down in Charleston a few weeks back. And she won these. Now we already have our own seed banks. We grow, everything that we grow is heirloom varieties, and then we collect seeds from that, and we've done that for the last several years. So we have our own seed banks here at the house, but these are going to stay good depending on the germination, you know, success on these, who knows. But there's wildflowers in here to bring pollinators in. There's vegetables and leafy greens and stuff in there. Like I said, we have our own seed bank for ourselves downstairs that we keep and we grow from each year. So that's more longer term type stuff. You know, when you're getting into 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months, God knows what's going to happen. There's certain people out there who want to, you know, prepare for something that would probably, we would never think would happen. I won't say nothing won't happen, but they prepare for one specific thing, and that can fail you when you need it, you know, when you need to be prepared for something else. Another thing is now, number one, where we live, we're rural. We're in West Virginia. We're up on top of a hill. When we built our house, we cut the trees back away from the house to give us a buffer. That way, if we get a storm and a tree falls, it doesn't hit the house. If there's a fire, we've got that buffer zone away from the house to where it's not surrounded by trees and a bunch of like fallen leaf litter and stuff like that. Still doesn't mean we're not at threat for anything like that, but it gives us a buffer zone to kind of, you know, try to get things stopped before it gets to the house. Landslide, yeah, we can have landslides here because we have a hill behind us. We're kind of up on a bench halfway up the hill, so we have a mountain up behind us. So yes, we could deal with a landslide type of thing. The good thing is we have property. We have other places we can go if we have to, and that's the thing to do. You want to make sure that you have an exit. You want to make sure that you have more than one exit to get out, okay, if you have to. But our whole purpose is preparing and for bugging in or hunkering down here and staying here. If we need to get out the door and go somewhere else, we have MREs. Okay, these are light, they're compact. I can fill a backpack with these. I can put some in everyone's backpack. We can get out the door to go where we need to go. Now, if you're talking about a bad weather event, like we'll just say we have a blizzard, okay, or a big snow event, like last year, it was cold. Man, it was cold last year. And we had 24 inches of snow on the ground. we live off of a back road. The Department of Highways don't get to us for about 3 or 4 days, sometimes even longer, because they're focused more on the main arteries, which would be the interstates. Then they hit the U.S. routes, which would be, you know, the 2-lane roads that are typically go from town to town to town. When they get to us, we've already had to rely on some stuff if we're not prepared to begin with. So don't think that, you know, well, if we have a blizzard, I'll just go to Walmart type of thing. You can't get out, you can't get out. And when you live up on a hill and your driveway's a half-mile long, I've got tractors and stuff, but it's going to take me a while to get my driveway cleared enough to get out. And then once I get out my driveway, I'm going to get on a road that hasn't been plowed or touched in 3 or 4 days, and it's just a big sheet of ice at that point. So realistically, just looking at what we've dealt with in the last 30 years, unless our home becomes compromised and uninhabitable or unsafe, we're prepared to stay here. But if we have to go get out and get out quick, then we've got the other means with the MREs to take with us and get out. And then if I can return back to the home safely and return back to what we need to, or come back and scavenge what we can, then we'll do that as well. So there's so many situations, there's so many things that you can prepare for. Maybe you live in a flood-prone area, maybe your house is flooded 3 or 4 times or once. If it's flooded once, it's going to flood again. All of your food stores in your home are pretty much going to be unusable at that point. If you live in Tornado Alley, where you're more prone to tornadoes, yes, we have them here in West Virginia, but not that often. I think it was 23 or 24, we had like the largest number of tornadoes in West Virginia on history. It's crazy. But they were short, didn't cover a lot of area. Damage was done mainly to homes and residences and a few businesses, but nothing widespread like you see out, you know, along Tornado Alley. Forest fires, we do have forest fires here in West Virginia, but they're far and few between. And like I said, we intentionally cut a buffer between our house and the woods and trees and stuff. Doesn't mean I'd want to stay here if we did have a forest fire in this area. If it started coming towards my house, you know, you have to have an exit. Like I said, you have to have more than one exit to get out. So those type of things. I'm not going to get into nuclear stuff, you know, that kind of stuff. Now, of course, we do have underground gas lines here. We have some pretty big transmission lines in the area. I think when they come to us, about 10 years ago, they wanted to put a gas line across our property. It was a 16-inch gas line. And from what I read and understood from them is if there was a leak in that line or a fire, an explosion from that line, based on the fact that it was a 16-inch line, our minimum evacuation distance either way would be 7/10 of a mile at minimum. So 7/10 of a mile, one way or the other, we would have to go to get away from that to be safe. So there's another instance. If you live near a railroad where they haul volatile chemicals, look at what happened in Ohio a couple years ago. Those kind of things. You want to get your stuff and get out. Now, you're not going to be packing a bunch of this stuff out of your house. You can put some of this stuff in a tote and get out, throw it in your trunk, and you're in the back of your truck and get out. But realistically is if you need to get out and get out, you need to have MREs or you need to have dehydrated food packs to take with you that's easy to carry, doesn't take up a lot of space, and gives you some nutrition while you're out. So again, just to kind of recap this is you know, does everybody have the ability, the knowledge, or the capability to home can a bunch of stuff? Probably not, but you can learn and you can do it. Like I said, you can go to the store and buy chicken and bring it home, put it in a jar and home can it. You can do the same thing with beef. Go get you some beef stew or get a roast and cut it up into chunks. Put it in a jar, prepare the jar and everything like that, pressure can it. Now you've got good animal protein and good animal fat to put on the shelf. It doesn't require refrigeration. You can learn any of this kind of stuff. And if you have the desire to do it, you can do it. That's just all there is to it. Again, YouTube is a wonderful resource and the internet is a wonderful resource for that kind of information and to learn those kind of skills. But there are several other things that you can do in the meantime to you know, have the food stores and have the safe foods that you need. And also just plan ahead. Make sure you've got a couple exits from your home. Got a bug flying around me here. Make sure you have a couple of different exits, a couple of different ways to get out to where you need to go. Don't depend on the government. Don't depend on FEMA to come and take care of you. Take care of yourself. Be ready. Be prepared. You know, and do it safely. Do it wisely. Have a couple different options here, and that way you're not stuck wishing to God you could get to Walmart, but you can't get to Walmart, and you're having to start eating cardboard boxes. This stuff isn't done out of fear. This stuff is done out of common sense, and that's why we do it. And these are typically foods that we eat, that we raise here on the farm. The oats, of course, is a little different story. The kids like oats. You have kids, you have to have foods that they like. But you also want to make sure that you have good animal fats, good animal protein, and stuff like that. This is going to satiate you longer, and this is complete nutrition. Whether you believe that or not, I don't care what side of the tracks you're on, whether you're vegetarian, vegan, carnivore, whatever. This and this is complete nutrition. Okay? You don't have to have carbohydrates unless you're a type 1 diabetic. You don't have to have carbohydrates. You don't have to have all of the sugary stuff. You don't even have to have potatoes if you don't like potatoes, but have those options. In a bad situation or a have-to situation, if somebody comes up and says, hey, Mike, you know, my family's going hungry, we don't have anything, here's 2 loaves of bread, man. Here's 2 loaves of bread, and here's some beefaroni. Okay? Go feed your family. Here's 4 servings of potato flakes. Here's a few MREs. Okay? I'm going to give you these in good faith that you're not going to keep coming back. You have to do more for yourself. If you run into that situation, of course, you know you're going to have a problem in the future, because somebody's going to say, where'd you get that at? Oh, you know, Mike had that, and Mike's got this, and Mike's got that. Keep your mouth shut. Only very, very close people and little kids would I share this with. But those kind of things you have to kind of take into consideration where you live, because people go from human to animal in 72 hours. So, anyways, just some different options to look at. We'll get more into some other stuff in a couple next videos. This is just simple stuff. This is simple stuff. In an afternoon, we've canned all this kind of stuff and done it. 3.5 hours in a pressure canner, I believe, if I want to remember right, for like the beef and the chicken and the venison and stuff. Now, you can can squirrel and possum if you have to. I mean, you know, just depends. Anyways, we'll move on with the next video in the series next. Try to get around to that sometime soon. Busy time of year here on the farm. Get and stay prepared. Stay free. God bless y'all.